This is Get Informed with Wajeeh. I'm Wajeeh Lion. Thanks for tuning in. While you are coming in, liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends coming from across the world, I know some of you from all across the world coming to listen to what I have to say. Thank you. That means a lot to me. If you have any questions, today is your day. Tomorrow, I'm taking a day off. And I figured it would be a good idea to have today mostly answering your questions. And then I can have my own talking points, or I can have my talking points and give you more questions give you more question time later on. Thank you. Just prepping. Appreciate you slamming that heart button. I see you guys working hard on that. I appreciate it. You guys know how to get to the question section or how to get to my group chat while we are hosting this live? Do we need to do that demonstration again? Anyone? Yes? No? I assume that's a no. It doesn't work on iPhones. I think it didn't work on my iPad because I was on the physical website. I didn't have the app downloaded, but it does work on iPhones. You just have to basically, like, when you're in your email and you want to go back, that's exactly what you're trying to do. Oh, really? I'll have to talk to Substack about that, see if they can do something about it. Um, just put your questions in here and I'll do my best to keep an eye on it. And before you click enter, just copy the question because if I miss it, you can paste it again real quickly and I'll be able to go see it again. But I'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll do my best. Um, I have published two articles today. One is about Israel taking a big piece of the Lebanese territory, and not only that, they're taking also their water space and taking their gas field in the sea. But I think what we really need to focus on is way closer to home today than abroad. When I first came to the United States back in 2005, I remember the US debt was around 22 trillion, 23 trillion, and that was 2005. US was in Iraq, in Afghanistan. We're fighting a war in multiple fronts. Our war in Afghanistan was to hunt down Osama bin Laden. A lot of Americans thought that we went into war in Iraq also because of terrorism. Interesting fact is there was no terrorist organization in Iraq during the existence of the dictator, strongman Saddam Hussein, neither from a Shi'i militia or from Al Qaeda or ISIS. Did you know that? Al Qaeda did not even exist there because they were afraid of Saddam Hussein. Iranian militias were also afraid of Saddam Hussein. He was the only leader in the Middle East putting Iran in check at the time. The United States had a huge miscalculation, entered the war. US thought, Americans thought they're fighting a war in Iraq to fight Al Qaeda, but all we were doing it was trying to find ways to make money out of the oil fields. The honest story. On March 17th, your national debt has exceeded $39 trillion. We're almost at $40 trillion. 2 years ago, our debt for the first time has exceeded the GDP, the gross domestic product. Yeah, gross domestic product. Why do we measure the consumer spending, and why do we measure the gross domestic product? It's because it is one of the best tools we can use in a capitalistic economy to measure the consumer power of purchasing all these goods. Gives us a good idea of the health of the economy. Gives us a good idea of a lot of things. Yeah, it measures the value of all final goods and services produced in a country or a region during a specific time period. So each country in the world has to measure their GDP so they can report it to the international market, so they can accept investments, so they can. People used to look at the US economy and see the debt and look at the GDP and compare it to each other and say, GDP is still way higher than the US debt. We'll continue investing. Now people are looking at the US economy, finding it is a risky place to invest. Good morning, good morning. And the people who are benefiting are bankers, financial industries, oil manufacturing, basic material manufacturing, like from Coke industry. I don't know. Not Coca-Cola. Don't mix Coca-Cola with Coke industries. The Koch brothers are a company that makes raw material goods and sell them on a global, yeah, Koch. Believe it or not, the Koch brothers will go to a lot of the universities that you send your kids to, including my university. And they will spend a couple $1 billion or couple, actually, they won't even spend $1 billion. They will spend a couple $1 million on a project for the business school, for example. And then they have their name all over the business school. So three-fourths of the school automatically graduate students that go to Coke Industries. Indoctrination. You want to call it indoctrination? This is indoctrination. Do you know what the Koch brothers do? Once they were asked, why do you lobby? By the way, I visited their headquarters when I was in the economic club at Kansas State University because their headquarters is in Topeka, Kansas. So I visited them with my economic club. We talked, we had questions back and forth. I asked him a question. Why does Coke industry lobbies the US government and undermines its sovereignty and undermines its political power so they can be, benefit from this over the rest of us? His answer was simple. Everyone else is doing it. If we don't do it, someone else will. The same exact excuse when I saw a settler in Israel taking a Palestinian land and he was being asked, like, why are you taking his land? He's like, if I don't steal it, someone else will. These organizations have enough money to pay people who have multiple PhDs at a time. So in the same class, in the same interview when we were in their meeting room, I they were telling us about a time where they were interviewing someone that has two PhDs in economics and something else. I don't know. Apparently, this guy is supposed to be a genius. And they were saying, like, we didn't accept him because he thought he couldn't learn anything else, which is fine, man. I could see why. But my point is that's how rich they are. They're not hiring one person that has two PhDs. They're hiring departments full of people with PhDs, departments full of people who have become student presidents, departments full of people who have graduated cum laude. I don't know how to pronounce that one. I've been trying to pronounce it. No, I know. Almost like it sounds like a Chinese word for the chicken something. I forgot what it was. But when you yeah, that one. Cum laude. Yeah, that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. When you graduate with full honors and you have A's in all your classes and you have 4.0 GPA, they give you some weird name and they give you extra ribbons and they call it cum laude or something like that. So those are the departments they're full of. They're not your everyday people. And what they're doing is they're sitting down mostly, and their department is how to play with the market, how to sell goods, how to find goods for cheaper, how to sell it for a little higher. That's their job. The people they hire to lobby are another game. The people they hire to lobby are another game. Are usually they hire former senators, former U.S. representatives, people who have they hire entire law firms instead of one person or two people. It's it's not what you imagine. So DC, instead of a nonprofit having one lobby day for their volunteers to all show up at the Capitol and beg the senators to do something good for humanity, these motherfuckers have people working 24/7. Not one, not two, the whole department. They hired the whole firm. All you need to do, make sure that all my demands are met. You need to have uh, a college uh, what is it called? Mm, yeah, a PAC fund. You need a PAC? No problem, Habibi. How much money you need in the PAC? $2 billion? The interesting about PACs is it's a newly thing that was made in the last 15 years or so, 16 years. And what it allows you, so regular donations, right? When I'm running for office, Wajeeh, I'm running for senator, maybe one day, and I run for this office and people come donate to me. They have a certain limit. They cannot donate more than that. There's certain regulations. Rich people wanted to bypass that. So they made something called PAC. And they worked their ass off, lobby to make sure that they can make sure to have it. What does a PAC do? Well, either you're on the right or you're on the left. You put billions of dollars instead of $100,000 or $1,000. You put $1 billion in there. No limit. You can put whatever money you want to put in there. But the only rule, no direct communication between you and the candidate. Jon Stewart, when he was in the Daily Show years ago, proved to us how that was bullshit and proved to us how they were still in communication with the campaign even after creating the path. And the rules and regulations prohibit them from communicating directly with the campaign. So all of a sudden, I'm a candidate. I'm on the right. I like the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers like me. So they make a pact for Wajeeh Lion pact, and they make ads. They make campaigns. They hire canvassers. They hire uh campaign managers, and the campaign manager doesn't work with me, but they have their own campaign. They use an app called Minivan, and that app they download people's voting roster, and they 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 basically use Excel to find out who voted for whom, and then they select the certain group of people they want to target, and then they find their address, and then they send people to their own address using an iPad now or a tablet or an iPhone, and they go using GPS house by house, and they have a script, and they read that script, and they tell you to vote for such and such, and it's all done by a PAC. There are nonprofits that do things like that for the general public that has nothing to do with PACs, like Jobs with Justice, an organization that likes to put people before profit and lobby governments and use lawyers and work with unions to fight for everyday people. So it's used by everyone, but it's abused by the rich because they have way more resources. While we have to depend on each other, the general public, and depend on our small donations, and we can't still keep up with the rich because they only get richer. What do you mean you lost my audio? I'm still talking. Audio is good. Okay. Back to the talking points. I apologize. I got derailed. The net interest outlines for 2026 are tracking to exceed 1.04 trillion dollars. The interest alone from our $39 trillion is $1 trillion. So by next year, we're automatically will have another trillion added just by interest. Debt service costs are now exceeding the escalating balanced defense budget. U.S. defense budget, which is the largest budget in the United States, on a year for a 1 year, for the things that we can measure. They have other things that we don't measure in the defense budget. The things that we can measure on a yearly basis is 893 billion to 947 billion. So we're just short of $1 trillion budget for our defense, and our interest from our debt is higher than our defense budget. And we are borrowing more money for this war. Who's paying for this? Trump is getting paid. Trump's family's got infrastructure in the military complex where they build military weapons and they get paid by the US government, and they're taking the loans and you're paying for it, but they're getting paid. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. We are 200 people strong today, and your support means everything. If you can become a paid subscriber, I hope you can consider it as well. And we'll keep working on this. So the Treasury now needs the yield rate is at 4.14. And our economy is going to be drained to pay off these loans for the next 30 years if we're focusing on paying them off. That means that every year we have to pay the whole benefit of large amount of draining whatever access of our economy, which we already don't have any access, and we push that into our debt. It would take us 30 years to pay it off, at least if that's our sole focus. So, imagine another 100 years with every president that comes into office. and, puts their interests first in terms of getting reelected, put their interests first after, public opinion and not focusing on the market. You get someone like Trump who's trying to control the Federal Reserve that is legally, constitutionally not obligated to answer to the president and is designed not to be influenced by political officials. Trump is literally threatening the head of the State of the Reserve, and that I have never seen something like this before. Why is he threatening? Because he's not doing what Trump wants, and Trump is not making the money that he wanted. Direct spending functions as a strict dominant strategy for both political factions, imposing these loans ensures that we are increasing our debt. When we are looking at the prisoner's dilemma, when we what we are doing in that equation and the prisoner dilemma, I'm trying to think of good way of explaining this. That's why I'm taking a minute. So the politicians accept the long-term macroeconomic ruin, which was what I was saying, as a suboptimal Nash equilibrium to secure short-term political survival. Exactly what I was saying a second ago. As a politician, I am willing to contribute to the decay of my macroeconomics in the long term just to ensure my political success in my short term. We saw the extent of that and the ability of how extreme that can become, specifically under the Trump administration. The bond market, because they want people to buy, completely discounts Washington's budget rhetoric as cheap talk. Institutional investors, instead of track costly sign, now are looking for what Trump is saying, and it's affecting the Treasury issuing these bonds and the rate of how much these bonds are going for. So the riskier the bond, the higher the interest rate. And as Trump's rhetoric increasing this war, as the United States issuing these bonds, they're having to issue these bonds with higher interest. So the sovereign credit downgrades and the global central bank activity accumulating record physical gold to hedge against the dollar de-evaluations. So the dollar has already become de-evaluated, and the only way the central bank can lend us money, which is kind of crazy, we have been the people lending the central bank money all this time, And China and Japan and Saudi Arabia and other countries were the countries buying most of our bonds, and then US citizens. Now no one is trying to buy our bonds, and we're having to go to the um, World Bank. And the World Bank is having to hold our gold assets in their possession as collateral for our loans, meaning there is no trust that the US can pay these loans unless they have a hold of the gold that the US is doing. This is all sounding like the Ottoman Empire all over again. Go back. Ottoman Empire, World War II. Yeah, they're the research I'm looking at saying that the US is taking loans from the World Bank at the moment, or trying to take loans from the World Bank. Yep. Sovereign, I'm gonna read this. Sovereign credit downgrades and global central bank activity accumulating record physical gold to hedge against dollar devaluation. Who's saying this? Institutional investors interested in tracking costly signs. The ones who are buying those bonds, they're the ones talking. Open source intelligence intercepts of the BRICS state media confirm advertisers are weaponizing US debts metric like China and Russia architecture use these figures as a primary propaganda to accelerate the global de-dollarization and frame the US as a debt as a symmetric systematic global risk. So who's going around the world? Who created the BRICS? The Russians and the Chinese are some of the closest allies who are members of the GCC. Saudi Arabia has joined the BRICS. UAE has joined the BRICS. Why have they joined the BRICS? Because they have economic benefit. China is rebuilding China is building something called the the Silk Road, which is based on the historical Silk Road, um, going from China to through Asia to the Middle East and then into Europe and then into Africa. And they're either lending a lot of countries the money for the Silk Road, or they're helping them build it for their own personal interest. And as they're doing that, we're seeing the global economy is stepping away from the U.S. dollar because they are finding better ways to do business now, having to do with the dollar. I also mentioned the other day that uh, the the death of the petrodollar, which is the agreement between Saudi Arabia and the United States back when Aramco was established years or decades ago. The agreement was oil is sold and bought using US dollars, which gave the US a lot of control over sanctions, gave a lot of US power over who's buying with what. And now that a lot of countries have been bitten by US sanctions, they're finding other ways to do business and not having to deal with the dollar. So what do? They find other currencies to do business with, like the Chinese yuan, like the real, and other currencies. These currencies are somewhat stable. They have a good economy behind them, and they don't have to face sanctions, and they don't have to worry about human rights, and they don't have to worry about a lot of other public opinion from the White House. So all of a sudden, they have been finding good ways of making business and not having to obey all of U.S. policy. Well, shit, Wajeeh, what are we doing now? Well, if the U.S. continues on this path, if the U.S. continues to have its debt over its GDP, then the global investors are going to be diverted from the US market and they're going to find somewhere else to spend their money. The US possesses no fiscal elasticity, a kinetic conflict with a near peer adversity or a supply chain collapse would force emergency financing entirely through hyper inflationary money, creating and threatening the stability of the domestic consumer base. What does that mean, Waji? What that means, as you are a citizen living paycheck to paycheck, the US government is also living paycheck to paycheck. The ones taking advantage of that system are the billionaires. And the US has the largest population of billionaires around the world. So why are they living in here not paying their share? Mr. Billionaire, where is my money? Mr. Billionaire, don't look at the millionaire. All of us should be millionaires. If the billionaires gave up being billionaires, we would all be millionaires. You know, I've never been to a very rich country that everyone lives rich and I've seen people rob and steal. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the Khulafa, one of the Prophet companions after the Prophet died and after he became, uh, you know, the the Amir, the king. There was a time where there was hunger. In Islam, if you steal, the judgment is you cut people's hands. Umar al-Khattab is known to be the most literal and extremist of the Muslim ideology between the Prophet's companions. So people were stealing, but he stopped the judgment of dismembering a hand for stealing. He said, "O Prophet companion, why did you do so?" He said, "They're not stealing to be bad, they're stealing to feed their kids." They're not stealing to be bad, they're stealing to feed their kids. I've never seen rich. I've seen corrupt rich people that steal other people money all the time, yes. But I've never seen people walk into a gas station and steal stuff like this and that, or walk into a grocery store and in my rich countries like that. Switzerland doesn't happen there. Rarely you see international heists do crazy plans that come from other countries flying. They have professionals, something like Hollywood movies. They do that every once in a while. You see it investigative. You hear this is the biggest diamond heist. You'll hear about it every once in a while. It happens in rich countries, but it's not conducted by the rich people. If everyone is not worried about their living wage, they would be having enough time to go back to school, to go to the hospital, get treated, to make sure that they can, you know, uh, build a house, start a business. There is a book I recommend for a lot of people who are quite uh, skeptical of social projects funded by government to improve the community. And one of them is the book called Utopia for Realists. Again, it's Utopia for Realists. One one of the experiments that happened in Canada, unfortunately, it's no longer there because came a very conservative person and ended it. They went to a town and they just looked at all of the town income, and anyone that fell below a certain wage got a check, no questions asked. The whole idea was to study what will happen next. Our dear conservatives or other rich people would like to claim that, oh, they will use that money to buy drugs. Oh, they will use that money to spend it on gambling. Oh, they will use that money on buying video games. The study have shown that these people went back to school. So they did see like there was a certain amount of unemployment happen. The people quit their job. They went to see why they quit their job. They found out they quit their job to go back to school. That's a good thing. This person have enough time, enough money now to go to school, pay for their education, become a highly trained individual, and contribute to the economy, bring more money, pay more taxes, bring more to the. We're benefiting. Sorry about that. The community is benefiting. We're all benefiting. They saw people go to the hospital. They saw people spend their money on grocery. They saw people spend their money on their debt. That's out of a real study, not my opinion. So we need to bring Bernie Sanders to the front line. We need to apologize to him for the mistreatment from both sides of the parties. We need to show that both parties from both sides need to vote for someone who's fighting every day for the working class and only for the working class. No companies. We don't want to see any company being leased out the DMV. Check your state, check your county. Make sure that your county is not being leased out to a private company. And Kansas and in Missouri, some DMVs, because the certain company, a certain guy has enough money and paid a good donation for the governor. The governor goes, "What do you need?" He goes, "Oh, I just need, to lease out the DMV from you guys." All of a sudden, it's a private company running your DMV. Open your eyes. Take a look who's taking advantage of your system. Demand change. If you can't be demanding change, run for office. AOC is good. AOC is good. She ran Bernie Sanders' campaign before she ran for office. AOC is good. She is just you can tell she's young because she's very you can feel the fire in her. But you won't get better than Bernie Sanders in terms of experience, in terms of knowledge. He's a little old, but Trump is old. Biden is old. Yes, we need someone young to be president and bring good energy into this country. Yeah, I agree. But at least put Bernie Sanders in the cabinet. At least put Bernie Sanders in. Although, and never mind, if you put him in the cabinet, we lose a very strong voice in the Senate. This is very difficult, guys. We need people who don't put corporations first. Like, I'm serious. People also tell me, like, do accountants work in finance firm where account for labor? I'm like, yeah, not every accountant is a manager. Management usually stays away from unions because they're part of the corporate ladder. But anyone that is below the corporate ladder is part of the working class, even if you are a white collar, you can be part of a working class. And you don't even know it. I hear a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck who are white collars working for, some companies or they're working from home and they're struggling. They're barely making it. They don't have a union. All of these industries need to start having unions. And the crazy thing is, once you start talking unions in any company, the company understands that they will have to share with the worker. The shareholders know now they have to share with the union. So they threaten to fire anyone. I give you a better one than that. They do campaigns and they call it something like the right to work. You go to the election, you're not informed about what does the right to work means, and you go to the ballot and you look at it and you're reading, oh, it says it's the right to work. It's probably a good thing. Click. You just denied yourself the right to have a union. Actually, you just defunded all the unions in your state. It's called the right to work, I'm telling you. They've been doing this state to state. It is called the right to work. I campaigned against it and I was part of a campaign against it. And Missouri. The right to work. So, what does unions do? Unions take about zero point 0.5 to 1.5% of your income. And they take that as your union dues to pay for the lawyers and to pay for the people who represent you and to go and give you better wages. And when you don't have, when you get fired, you would have some sort of income from the union. There's a lot of benefits. So the right to work says, and you see how dirty these companies are. If there's a union, then that union should represent everyone in the company, regardless if they pay dues or not. Why aren't you paying the dues, company? Why isn't the company paying the dues? Course, the company doesn't want to pay the dues, but they want the union to pay the dues for everyone else. And once they do that, they have bankrupted the union from all the funds that they need to use to make sure that the people that they supposed to represent are adequately represented in front of the company, in front of the law. So they go around and they pass the right to work, and they make it easier for companies if they find out that you're trying to unionize to fire you, and they make it easier for companies to crack down and hire people who are specialists. There are people who are specialists in cracking down on these union organizers, and what they do. All of a sudden you're like asking, "Hey, why don't let's make a union?" All of a sudden the company goes, "We are a family." Bitch, please. Where were you a year ago? "We are a family. We will come together. We will give you extra benefits. Let's give you this legal advice." And you click on the link for the legal advice, and it's a free consultation. What the fuck is a free consultation do me? You need a financial advisor to help you do all the get rid of all of your loans and do the legally you can hire a lawyer and sell down your loans for a lot cheaper. You just have to be rich enough to hire a lawyer. So they find every opportunity to make you pay for it. They don't want to take any responsibility. Have you checked the laws for workers' comp in your state? Do you know each state has different work comp injury laws? Did you know if you lose your hand on the job, you might only get $100,000 depending on where you live? Meaning you no longer have a hand. They have a chart with the body part of a human divided into pieces, like as if you're going to a butcher shop and the butcher gives you, oh, this tenderloin right here is 10.99 a pound. This ribeye is 5.99 a pound. They have exactly like that for your human body. And guess who's lobbying to change that all the time? Corporations. They pass it. You don't hear about it because it doesn't sound that sexy until you get injured. All of a sudden, you're out of the job. You get 1/4 of your income that you used to get, that you barely used to have enough of to survive on. Your treatment has to go through a specific line of people that they choose. And that specific line of people that they choose, they have to demand them what treatment that they can do and ignore the doctor exact recommendations. Ask me about it. I got 2 staph infections, 11 surgeries because of a racist doctor and a work comp injury. Yeah. All I was doing is voter education for the November ballot. Someone came out of the house, attacked me. I just happened to live in Missouri. The doctor that was treating me purposely tortured me. I'm not going to go into the details. I asked for the work comp company to send me go and get a second opinion because my hand was obviously infected. Pus was coming out. You could tell it was fucked up. The company sends me back again to the exact same doctor for a second opinion. He goes, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. A couple of days later, I go to the ER. They're like, you're this close from losing your hand. Actually, you're this close from dying. My hand was open for about a year where they had to pack it, unpack it with cotton swabs that had antibiotics in it, the PIC line with antibiotics. And now I have to go to the Mayo Clinic to get my hand treated. I have to go to the best hospital in the world, and the best hospital in the world doesn't take anyone. If I want to fuck up the life of the doctor, I would mention his name on the live stream, but I'm not this messed up. This is the reality of many Americans. For someone that came from a very well-off family, this was a shock to me. I was really sheltered growing up sometimes. Our health paid for everything in Saudi Arabia. So, someone that doesn't have the training to be a doctor tells the doctor how to treat your hand, and the doctor that's treating your hand is racist, depending on where you live. Racism in the medical industry in the United States, in particularly, has played a big part. Have you read about the cells that they use to test the cancer cells they use on a regular basis to study cancer and stuff? It was stolen from a black woman that was tortured in a hospital in the United States, and she was tortured and tested on without her consent for years and years and years until now. Neither her, she's passed away a year, decades ago. Neither her family gets any compensation. We have a lot to work on here in the United States. And, like, if I wasn't living here and if I didn't care about the United States and if I didn't care about the American people, I wouldn't be telling you any of this shit. I'll be continue telling you about the Middle East. But hold on, before we go there, can we understand the amount of shit that we're in before we go to the Middle East? Anyways, I'm gonna go to the group chat. I'm gonna look for your questions. Do you guys want me to show you how to get to the group chat and ask your questions? Anyone wants to show you guys how to get to the group chat? Or just ask your questions in the live stream. Meantime, keep an eye, keep an eye. Nothing came up. Okay. Uh, what's going on the Brandy Down is going YG in a Q&A. Could you please speak about the idea, understanding about why women are often so isolated and we as Western women feel repressed or even hated in the Middle East culture? I would imagine no Arabian man would say he hates his mom or sister, yet they still say they need a guardian. Guardianship laws are quite fucked up, and I've seen the brunt of it in front of my eyes from the religious police of Saudi Arabia, um, and non-religious police. GCC nations vary from country to country in regards of conservatism, but tribal families for sure are going to be the most conservative, and they're going to have the most segregative culture between men and women. The This was definitely created and expedited after, the hegemony of the Islamic belief around the world. Women played a large part of the Arabian Peninsula culture for a very long time. In fact, the first wife of the Prophet, and a lot of Muslims like to brag about this, but the first wife of the Prophet before he was introduced or before he became Prophet, she was a businesswoman. And he used to work for her before he was married to her. So I was going to say something, but I don't want to be bad. I was going to say he found a sugar mommy. I could have hold it. Anyways, so he was working for his wife before he married her, and she was kind of the story goes she was kind of impressed by his honesty, and then married him. She passed away. He ended up marrying other people later on, and marrying more and more people. Um, and as the hegemony of that Arabian imperialism spreads, there has been quite an isolation for the Arabic woman in the Arabian Peninsula, and tasks were separated by gender, um, not only by cooking, cleaning, by even some tasks in the farm, like the some people used to have certain things picked by women because they had softer hands, and other people would have like the people digging the soil were it was weird. It was and And then after countries became formal after World War II, they definitely had segregation laws based on Sharia. And for many countries, they weren't even allowed to drive. They became legal in one countries after the other. And Saudi Arabia was the last country to allow women to drive. You'll have people who the laws recently have changed in Saudi Arabia, ending the guardianship to a certain extent for some women. But the reality on the ground, if a father or a mother in the kingdom can file a disobedience claim to the authorities, and that would be alone good enough for you to go to jail. If your parents go to the authorities and they file, oh, my son doesn't listen to me. He's not a good son. My daughter doesn't listen to me. She's not a good daughter. Authorities come, take them, put them in jail. What is the sadistic doctor's name? No, I'm not trying to fuck his life up. I'm not that. If I want to fuck his life up, I would have told you guys. Well, I want your thought on Imam Khan in Pakistan. What about him? I just use my iPhone because I am losing you. I'm sorry. Is there something wrong with my connection? I can get the chat but lose the live. Oh, sorry. I'm reading the questions here. What is the reasoning? Like, why do they see it as a need? Sorry, I forgot what is that question for. I don't know what I was talking about. I would have won Vietnam quickly, Trump said. Oh my God, he did not. Trump says I would have won Vietnam quickly. Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Lots of men are afraid of strong women. They are, and in fact, the fucked up thing is all of the wars were started by men, not women. We would be having a lot more peace if we didn't have men ruling. For real, you know. Sometimes a man needs to step aside. You know, for a large part of Arabian history, women led the especially in Yemen and Socotra, Queen Socotra. She was a queen of her people, and they used to worship the sun, and they their queen was a woman. Many societies were ruled by women, and they were way more, wiser. Imran Khan. I think he needs to get out of political prison and have his and let him leave the country at least or something. No need to keep him in jail. What? What? I don't know what you're saying. What at? I'm slow reading. I'm sorry. I was watching a show yesterday that was showing how they use the gun to make them straight. And where in Saudi Arabia, this conversion therapy still happens there, even though they understand that it doesn't work. They still use shock therapy. They use electric therapy. They use chemical castration. Sometimes lobotomy. They all of it is being done. Um, in the name of religion as well. My parents was trying to send me there. I'm actually praying that DJT has a devastating stroke. Oh my God. And he's gonna keep eating the McDonald's. Don't worry. He's eating the McDonald's. The same problem with the men in the Middle East, like here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. By the way, a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot more in common between rednecks and Bedouins. The the connection is there. Take a look. They both like guns. They both like trucks. They both like their animals, farming animals, and they are both the not all the time, but bad with women, misogynistic, I will say. Yes, there's many younger women who are becoming more liberal. An inspiration for a lot of women in the Middle East is her name was just on my tongue. إيش اسم النسوية المصرية المشهورة؟ نوال السعداوي. Nawal al-Saadawi is a very famous Egyptian feminist who a lot of women around the world is inspired by. And she did a lot of education on empowering women and helping them recognize their importance and their place in society. Why are human beings so effing cruel? One wise person told me once, you cannot make sense of evil, but you can always work to fight it back or help others walk away from it. Okay, that's the end of the questions here. I'm gonna go to the questions in the group chat. Where's the live Substack from? And what you mean, where's the live stack from? We were live today. Someone's asking where's the live stack from, for a live Substack from Black Man Spy. It's okay. It's okay. We were live. Recording will be there. Don't worry about it. Uh, come back tomorrow. And actually, tomorrow I won't be here. I'm old enough to remember when Bill Clinton balanced the budget, right? He was the only president that ever had a surplus in his economy. That's why he was reelected, even though he had a huge controversy in his first election. Mm. No, no need to bring people's name into this, huh? He did it by increasing taxes and cutting spending, just what any conservative would talk about and not do. Oh, yeah. Then Congress passed the Balanced Budget Act of 1997. What happened to that? Mm, That's why you see I think part of that is why you see the economy, like the government shut down every year, every fiscal year, when the Republicans and Democrats have to sit down and come up with a plan where they both like each other and they both never like each other for some reason. They used to work with each other. I am friends with former Governor John Carlin, and I interviewed him on my radio talk show when I was a student at Kent State University. And I asked him back in 2013, 2014, what do you miss about, American politics? And he said something I used to describe to Saudis about American politics. He said, I wish I had the day where I would be arguing with my fellow Republican on the floor. We would be exchanging some hard words, and after we're done, we leave the job, we go to a steakhouse, and we be colleagues. Showed you some sort of, human level of maturity. Shows you some level of sitting up with the other side and understanding and being in their shoes and walking in their place and knowing that this is a job and this is a reality and not having so much hatred on the floor, so much pity, so much pity. And unfortunately, the more corporations get into it, the more foreign lobbies are introduced into the equation. the more we are vulnerable to all of these hatred between of our representatives and between of our senators. We need to dial down this sort of uh, like no one is buying it anymore. We need to dial down this uh, polarization. There needs to be less polarization, and there needs to be citizenship. There needs to be common citizenship between all of us. Understanding this common respect is gone for some reason. I was a union organizer when I started as a community activist. I got fired when they discovered I was working for the union, for the unit rubber. Yeah, worker. I went on to work for a United Farm Worker. At least we got the farm workers bit. I want to ask you a question, Teresa. Do you know a very famous, or have you heard of a very famous farmers union organizer with the last name Chavez? A very famous guy. His son is my friend. Yes, Flown Chavez. His son is my friend. So, yes. He's a very humble guy, very, very bubbly, very nice. Um, Learned a lot from him. We met while we were doing a training for the ACLU. We were doing the training on behalf of the ACLU for how to be part of the organizing side. Thank you, thank you. Persia, mostly Persia and Iran. Someone's asking what are the names for the geographic name in Iran. Persia is the historical name for Iran. I don't remember that. I haven't read that stuff about him yet. Maybe I will take a look at that. Okay, we have come to 10:45. Are there still Persian cats? Yes, there are Persian cats. Yeah, yes. Cats are like very, very close to heart for a lot of people in the Middle East. Um, there's, you know, Middle East and cats go together. If you go in the Middle East and you don't see cats, there's something wrong. The unfortunate reality is that we don't treat them humane, and when we want to control their population, we don't do it correctly. We do it the very inhumane way. Um, but that's another story for another time. We don't have human rights or animal rights in the region, but we do love our cats. I don't know what to tell you. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for coming. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please consider becoming a free subscriber. If you can afford becoming a paid member, please consider becoming a paid member. It takes care of my bills, take care of my dues, helps me do what I do here full time. If you're watching this on YouTube, you are watching a recording. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Why not? Bring us money both ways. Like, subscribe, and share. As I like to say, مع السلامة. Bye bye. وبالإنجليزي, goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, the day after, maybe.